Hey, this is Dr. Andre Evans, and you are watching Fresh Thought Fridays. Thanks for joining. So today's Fresh Thought, fire alarms. This is that time of year where I dust off, clean, and test my fire alarm to make sure that it's working properly. And you know me, I always like to know how things work. And so if you know what about a fire alarm does, or if you know about fire alarms, you know that they're designed to detect changes in the atmosphere before, the fire starts, before the destruction of fire comes. So basically, when the alarm is about to go off, what it's done is it's noticed that there are signs that there's something in the atmosphere of the air that doesn't belong there. So it's alarming you before the fire, and then you have a decision to make, right? You got to decide, your decision, I should say, will either lead to the destruction of the fire because you don't adhere to the signs, the warnings, or your decision allows you to deal with the signs so that nothing is harmed by the destruction of fire, right? And so a good alarm, like I mentioned then, a good alarm will always show you that something has changed in your environment before it brings on, or those changes are warnings. So it's alarming you before those signs turn into something more destructive than what's currently happening. Of course, we don't want the fire to break out because we don't want anything to destroy, what we value in our atmosphere, right? And that's what a good alarm will do. And it reminds me of a verse that Luke writes in the 21st chapter, and I'm going to read verses 25 through 28. And it says, "There will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on earth distress of nations and perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will be fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world. For the powers of heaven will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." I like the picture that Luke is trying to paint when it comes to seeing warning signs or sounding the alarm, because I realize that sometimes we don't see warning signs. Sometimes we don't see that God is trying to sound the alarm in our life. And because we don't see the warning signs, sometimes destruction comes as a result of us not paying attention to the signs that God is sending us. I wonder if you have ever recognized in your life when you've been praying for something, right? And you put your hope where God is showing you that He's answering your prayers. But then all of a sudden, all hell seems to break loose, right? And if you're not careful, then you pay more attention to what's happening than why it's happening, right? So you've been praying for a house, but then this area where you're putting your hope in the home ownership process starts to get a little hard. Or you've been praying for your family to go to the next level, but where you've been praying, this journey for your family going higher starts to get difficult, and things just start happening. You're trying to figure out what is going on. In other words, we start paying more attention to the signs that lead to destruction than why God allowed those signs to take place in the first place. This is what Luke is talking about, because some people will see these signs. Look, that perplexity starts to come and people fainting starts to come. In other words, people start to pay more attention to what's happening with the signs which lead to destruction than why God allowed the signs to happen in the first place. I wonder if you've been there. I wonder if you paid more attention to the calamity than you did to the fact that God allowed. And why would God allow the calamity to take place in the first place? God is saying, I'm sending you these signs so that you see the alarm, because your atmosphere has changed. Something in your atmosphere has changed. And now where you once had hope, you're now worried and you're fearsome and you're wondering what is going on. And God then, through Luke, he uses that word signs, because I need you to pay attention to the signs. And I love that word signs. In the Greek, that word signs is Simeon. That's how you pronounce it, Simeon. And what it means when you translate it to the English, and I'm trying not to shout right here, what it means is God is sending you a miracle, but watch this, not just a miracle, it's a miracle that's going to lead to something beyond the miracle. Well, now wait a second, Lord. I've been praying for this and I put all my hope in this because I'm trusting you. And now you're sending me stuff that sends me into perplexity, that sends me into fear, that sends me into fainting. You're sending me things, watch this, that don't look like a miracle. So why would you say that these signs are a warning sign of a miracle, or not really of a miracle, that these signs are a miracle and they're going to lead beyond something that I should be alarmed about? And here's where I'm trying not to shout, because the fact of the matter is even though it looks like something that perplexes you, it's still a miracle, number one. How could it be a miracle? Because if you think back over your life and realize that in spite of who you've been, God is still willing to agitate your atmosphere, that's the miracle. That's shouting right there. I feel goosebumps right there. When I realized who I once was in this world, and God still thought enough about me to agitate my world, still thought enough about me to aggravate my world. I feel like shouting. God still thought enough about me to send a sign that didn't look like a great sign, but it's enough to let me know that he's giving attention to me when I don't deserve the attention. He's giving some type of recognition to me when I don't deserve the recognition. I've been in some dark places and God agitated the dark places, and what looked like agitation and aggravation wasn't anything to shout about. But when I just think about the fact that God thought enough about me that in spite of who I was, he still showed up and shook up my world. But it's not just a miracle that he decided that he would do something. The signs that look like agitation would move me beyond what they are. Ooh, wait a second. That means God agitated your world to elevate you in your world. I'm gonna let you shout for a second. God thought enough about you to send what would antagonize you to lift you, to send what would agitate you to elevate you. But he sent it as an alarm. See, some of y'all not understanding. The God that we serve sends you signs that agitate you. But if you respond the appropriate way, they're actually going to elevate you. Oh, Jesus. That means there have been times where if I didn't stop and realize that God was trying to show some things that he's shaking up, I almost let what was agitating me stop me from being elevated. Ooh, and look at what he says right then and there. He says these signs ought to cause you to do two things. It ought to cause you, watch this, to straighten up, which means look up in the Greek. And then it ought to cause you to raise up, which means lift up in the Greek. You should be shouting right there. See, when you start to see something changing in your atmosphere that you don't like, God's trying to elevate you. And instead of focusing on what's agitating you, you ought to look up and lift his name up. You ought to look up and start shouting his name. You ought to look up and start exalting his name. You can be bothered, you could be angry, you could be set off, but you're going to miss your elevation. You see, when God starts to send things that are agitating and aggravating, you ought to look up and say, God, thank you for thinking enough about me to get me to the point that instead of me being aggravated, I'm going to exalt your name. Instead of me being hurt, I'm going to praise your name. I got a hallelujah for every hurt the devil has sent me. I feel like shouting right there. I got a praise for every problem that shows up. What do you have when agitation shows up? Do you have exhortation in your lips? Do you got a praise you can throw down right there? And look at what he says. Go ahead and look up and lift up, because redemption is coming up. Jesus, that word redemption in the Greek, it's here. Watch this. Normally, redemption would mean that he would pay off your debt so that you could see your true value. But redemption here in this verse means that he wants to deliver you before the debt. Y'all not hearing what I just said? That's why there's an alarm system. That's why there's an awareness. That's why God rings the bell and sounds the alarm. He's saying, listen, if you just start praising me right where you are, I'm going to deliver you before the debt even comes. I'm going to put you in purpose before the problems really take hold. I feel like shouting. God is simply saying, if you will look up, lift up, then I'll redeem you. I'm going to give you deliverance before you lose one single thing. Have you ever been able to shout unto God before anything ever happened? That's what God is saying. God is saying, I'm sounding the alarm. Your atmosphere is being agitated, not because I'm sending you into destruction, because I need a response out of you that will send you into divine favor. I need a response out of you that'll get you where you're supposed to go. God is saying, I'm sounding the alarm so you can praise your way to purpose. Praise your way to what I promised you. Praise your way to what you've been praying for. Oh, I feel like shouting right there. It's here where I see signs and things in my atmosphere that ought not be. I'm not finna get upset. I'm finna give God my best praise. If God has thought enough about you that when you prayed, he started sending signs to shake up your atmosphere. He's saying, I'm sounding the alarm before the destruction comes. How will you respond? Look up, lift up, and watch him redeem you. Fire alarms. That's today's fresh thought. Amen.